Real Sports Talk Chicago right here. It's your boy Juice Man.
This is Dexter Martell here giving you the truth.
All right, today's topics we're going to start off, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers first, losing to Kansas City Chiefs. What is your opinion about Kansas City Chiefs doing the unthinkable and actually beating the Green Bay Packers?
It's just, like you just said, the unthinkable. It happens. It happens in the NFL. Every team, except for the 72 Dolphins, has a game where they just didn't show up. And I don't even think it was that Green Bay didn't show up. It's just their injury showed. They lost 2 right tackles in one game, not 1, 2. They were just hurt, beat up. But if you look, they only lost by 5 points. It wasn't like they were completely dominated. Kansas City's one of the most difficult places to play, whether Kansas City's good or not good. And Kansas City is still in the playoff chase, by the way.
I'll say this, though. Actually, it's not – the Packers actually did get dominated in that game. Don't let that final score fool you, because the Packers were down at the time at least by 12 points. Kansas City was in control. Like, the first half, Kansas City was up 6-0 the first half. Rodgers only had 41 passing yards in the first half. So it's not like Green Bay Packers weren't dominated. The Green Bay Packers were dominated in that game yesterday.
They couldn't get the ball. Kansas City showed a weakness that Green Bay had not seen. They had trouble against the run. Everybody had always tried to throw against the Packers. Kansas City dominated them at the line of scrimmage. Kansas City showed a lot of heart, a lot of effort, and they really showed they didn't like Todd Haley because they hadn't played this hard all year.
I agree with you right there. I mean, isn't it kind of funny how, a team's head coach gets fired or whatever, and then the next week they come out and they play their butts off for a good coach. For assistant coach. But in this case, though, it's Romeo Crennel, and he's a very good coach right there.
And they might want to keep him because Romeo can coach. He won 10 games with Cleveland. Let's remember this. And he got the best out of Braylon Edwards. So
I agree with you right there.
He can coach, but what is the ceiling to this team? What is the ceiling? They have 2 games left, and they're hoping for Denver to lose. And if Kansas City beats Oakland and Denver loses in Buffalo, they're going to the last game of the season against Denver, in Denver, for a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's hoping if the San Diego Chargers now, they still have to lose to the Lions now this week in Detroit on Saturday.
Detroit's not beating San Diego. This is the biggest game in Detroit since 2000 when Paul Ettinger kicked the field goal to beat the Lions in the last game of the season to eliminate them from the playoffs. The last game that they've had a chance. This is the most important game in Detroit in 10 years.
I would disagree, though, because it can't really be a big game for Detroit, because if you look at the standings right now, Detroit and Atlanta are still 2 games ahead of the 7th place and 8th place wild card teams right now. So really, technically, yes, it is a big game where, if Atlanta and Detroit wins this week, they basically clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah, they're in. But do you want to go? Can you guarantee? Atlanta's playing in New Orleans. Then you have Detroit against the hottest team every December against San Diego in Detroit. They have to win this game because then you go to Green Bay, and that's a rivalry game.
Okay, but if you look at this week, though, who does Green Bay play?
They play the Bears.
So right there, you have the Bears are pretty much essentially knocked out the playoffs right now.
It's a rivalry game, and we've seen the weirdest things happen in rivalry games. The weirdest. Look at what happened with Tennessee and Indianapolis. You're never out of it. This is the NFL. It's a week-to-week thing. If something freaky can happen, we've seen it happen before in the NFL, where teams that you go, come on. The Packers just lost to Kansas City. Indianapolis won. Anything can happen.
I'll even add it. Look at the whole New York Giants versus Washington yesterday. How does the Giants now become from an emotional roller coaster win, somehow coming back from 12 points in 5 minutes versus Dallas, to you lay an egg at home versus the Redskins?
But that's the classic letdown game. You have this Washington game, which Washington is. They're not going anywhere. That's already guaranteed. Next week, they essentially have another home game against the Jets, which they're going to have to get ready for. And then they have a home game against Dallas. The Giants still are in control. If the Giants win the next 2 games, they're still in.
But that's the same thing with the Cowboys right now, too.
But the Cowboys got to go win in New York.
But the whole thing with this,
the biggest issue is this. We're sitting here and we're talking about how alive Dallas and New York is, if the Jets beat the Giants, which it's 50-50 because they both need to win that game, and Philadelphia finds a way to beat Dallas in Dallas, you're going into the final week of the season with Dallas and New York. They're going to eliminate one of them is going to eliminate the other. But
if that's the case scenario, you have 3 teams vying for one spot because of one game.
And look at who Philadelphia gets to go play against. They get Washington at home.
Okay, and this is the same Washington team that actually beat Philadelphia. This is the crazy thing about the NFC East.
That's the crazy thing about
Washington
the NFC.
has swept the Giants this year in the NFC East.
And they've beaten everybody but
Dallas.
The Cowboys.
Exactly.
And the Cowboys can have troubles with Dallas. This can really there might be an 8-8 team in the playoffs that shouldn't make the playoffs. And that's just in the NFC East. Look at the AFC West. The same thing can happen over there if Buffalo could pull off one upset. And this is the first week Tim Tebow will be going into a game as the favorite. This is completely different. He is expected to win the game now.
I think they were actually favorites versus Minnesota. They were favorites. They were like a 1.2 point favorite when they were in Minnesota.
But now they're really going to be favored to win Buffalo. Because if they win, they're in. Everybody, if they win, they're in.
Well, no.
And Oakland has to lose against Kansas City.
No, Oakland has to lose. I think they're still a game up, but I think the whole thing is San Diego. It depends on San Diego.
No, they already beat San Diego. They swept San Diego.
I know, but still, though.
But
even they have to win, though, because San Diego's still in the playoffs.
But that's what I mean, though. If they win, essentially they're in.
I agree with you.
Because there'll be 9 wins. Essentially, if this is Denver's big game, this is where we're going to really find out what Tim Tebow has. Because it's not going to be easy going to Buffalo. You're going all the way across country, number one. And to be honest, Buffalo's a weird team. They played very good in the beginning of the season. They've been terrible the last month and a half. If they can find a way to play good in one game, then you're going into week 17 with everything on the line.
Yeah, I just don't, you know what? I don't see the Broncos losing to Buffalo at all because Buffalo is just, it's like what you said. You start off the season hot. They even beat the Patriots for crying out loud. But it was kind of one of those, they had a couple fluke wins. I'll say that in the beginning. And that's what happened. I mean, it
was a fluke against the Patriots. They got 4 interceptions off Tom Brady.
Yeah, like whenever you're going to see Tom Brady throw 4 interceptions. And then it's kind of like Buffalo and Detroit were kind of the two same teams, except Detroit has somehow found a way to right their ship right now during clutch time, whereas Buffalo, they went straight
into the ditch.
Like my thing, you know, saying before we go talk to the Bears, let's talk about Detroit real quick. Detroit is still a team. They had 3 fluke wins.
What fluke wins?
Fluke wins. They came back from Dallas down 14.
But that's Dallas. Dallas is
fluke.
It's
Minnesota.
Is Dallas famous for not blowing games this year? You cannot call that a fluke. Dallas blew one against the Jets. They blew one against the Giants. That's what Dallas does. Dallas doesn't find a way to win games. They find a way to lose games. How is it a fluke if that same team has blown 4 games?
Because the same the same Detroit team yesterday versus Oakland. This is the same Detroit team. They're always down throughout the whole game.
And it's their trend. They play better. They play better when their backs are against the wall. If you look at Detroit, look at how they've played. It's their trend. Dallas's trend is don't be leading in the 4th quarter.
Dallas's trend is more. I would actually say
giving the ball to the running back.
It's not offense. It's the defense. Dallas has a terrible secondary, and it's been like that for 4 or 5 years now.
I wouldn't say for 4 or 5 years. They've always been based more on their front 7, more on their secondary. What I will say about Dallas is this. Dallas is the team, man for man, they have as much talent as any elite team in the NFL. But the games they've lost, it's not the secondary's fault.
It is a secondary.
It's not. Last week you gave me the same thing with the Bears and Denver. It's the defense's fault.
It was the defense's fault.
I'm giving you the same thing. Eventually, the head coach has to hand the ball off and waste some time. They get into this thing where they want to put up stats. Dallas has been in control of more than one game. They've been in control against Arizona. They were in control against the Giants.
And what did the defense do?
They were in control. But what did the offense do? The offense continues to throw the ball. Look at the stats. They're throwing the ball 55%.
Yes, I understand. 60%. Like Romo threw the ball in the 3rd down. That was one of those where
against Detroit, he threw 3 picks.
They got careless because that's when they should have ran the ball. But at the same time, though, you have to look at Dallas secondary. Terrence Newman gets burnt all the time in the fourth quarter.
I'm going to put it to you like this. Every team in the league has issues somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Dallas' main issue.
When I look at Tony Romo, because I look at a guy over there in New England, and I look at the guy over there, Rodgers, and I look at Breeze, they don't have great defenses. They don't.
Yeah, because they have to score, though.
But Dallas can score. They got Des Bryant, Miles Austin, and Jason Witten. They have enough offense to score as much as these other teams score. The difference is these quarterbacks don't make those costly picks.
But when's Romo's last interception?
He's thrown 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions the last 8 weeks. You're right about that.
I mean,
But he missed Miles Austin wide open. If he hits Miles Austin, we're not talking about them losing to the Giants, are we? If he hits Miles Austin,
that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing with this thing. You can't solely put the blame on Romo right there. Miles Austin.
Quarterbacks always get more of the blame, and they get the most of the credit. That's what this is. This is the NFL. That's the whole position. Tony Romo has a bunch of fans. I am not against. To me, he's an above a very good quarterback. But when you talk about the elite quarterbacks, the Drew Breeses, the
Brady's, the
Rodgers,
and Peyton Manning.
And when Peyton Manning's healthy, Peyton Manning, they find ways to win those games that they're supposed to lose or they're really close to.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Over his history, he's had a lot of clutch plays and the kickers miss kicks. But it's just different. Sometimes
it's not different.
It's just sometimes you look at that corner and you're sitting there with this guy. You're looking at Tony Romo and I'm looking at Tom Brady, and you look at Tom Brady and you feel that team's gonna win.
Yeah, but
you feel isn't it different?
I agree with you, but here's the thing though. You're putting a twist on it. You're putting it in contrast. When you're talking about Brady, Rodgers, and Peyton Manning, all that, they actually had the ball in the final minute where they scored a touchdown. Where Dallas and Tony Romo
made the kicks.
Dallas has been up 12 points, 10 points or whatever, but when it comes time to the defense in the last couple minutes of the game, Rob Ryan wants to keep blitzing. But
there's key throws.
The secondary
there's
open.
Key throws you have to make in games.
He's made a ton of key throws.
He missed one with Miles Austin.
Okay, you're talking about one throw, though.
When they went 12-4 and they lost to the Giants in the playoffs, he's had bad games and bad moments. Or bad moment against the Jets earlier this year. They were dominating the game, and he throws. Why were you going to go pick on Darrelle Revis? Why would you do that?
Because that's one of those. I can't explain the throw, but when you have Des Bryant versus Revis, you're going to go to Des Bryant. Des Bryant is a playmaker.
And that's what happened. Darrelle Revis showed he was a better corner than Des Bryant is a wide receiver.
So Tony Romo actually has 3 pick sixes this year. But if you take that Jets game, because see, the whole thing with people when they want to judge Romo, you're judging him off of a week 1 game.
Well, then
that's your argument.
And then week 5, he throws 2 pick sixes against Detroit.
Week 1 and week 5.
And then
if you cancel that,
you're up 12, and it's just not Tony Romo. You are right. The media makes a big thing. It's just Tony. It's Jason Garrett too.
It is Jason Garrett, exactly.
And it's the guy upstairs, Jerry Jones too, because Dallas refuses to get themselves a heavyweight coach for a heavyweight team.
I agree with you
because there's certain calls that you have to make. Tony Romo shouldn't be throwing the ball 35, 40 times a game. He can. He has the talent to do it, but he has above average talent when these other quarterbacks have elite talent. Classic point. The back throw he throws against Detroit